Good morning and welcome to the Saskatchewan Science Centre Girls in STEAM Conference 2022. My name is Sarah McCreary, science educator at the Saskatchewan Science Centre and your host for this very special event. I am joining you today from Treaty 4, home to the Saulteaux, Cree, Dakota, Lakota, and Nakota peoples, as well as the homeland of the Métis. I encourage you to share with us where you are coming from in the chat box to the side of your screen. If throughout the event you run into any technical issues, send a message to the chat box and tech support will assist you. We understand that everyone might not be able to watch all the videos live, so after the conference you will be able to view the recordings at a more convenient time. If you want to share what you're working on throughout the day, with permission from a parent or guardian, you can upload pictures through the chat or upload them to the gallery page. Now, I would like to introduce Elder Marjorie LaValle, who was an associate professor at the University of Regina, FNUC, in the Faculty of Indigenous Education for almost 20 years. She has been in the field of Indigenous education for the past 48 years. We are truly fortunate and honored to have Elder LaValle open our conference today.
Stick this way. I'm going to take this off. To come and open this session here with a prayer, and I'm going to sing for you as well. And before I do that, I have this little frying pan or whatever you call it with the sage in it and the sweetgrass that was given here. And I'll smudge and give thanks, and hopefully that we pray that all the sessions that you have, that everything works out for the people that have organized this event. I was blessed with a braid of sweetgrass and tobacco. Tobacco is number one for us in Indian country. We have been blessed with the tobacco everywhere we go because we use it with our pipe. You know, the pipe that I have at home, I have two pipes that I use that have been passed on to me, and both of those pipes are over 100 years old. One of them was my late great-grandmother that had it, and so when the people passed on, the other old ladies, my grandmothers, they passed it on to me. And we have to pass it on to the family that, you know, will carry it on. Because that's alive. The pipe is alive. When we light it, it energizes the whole place. And the other thing I wanted to say is I want to thank the Science Centre for inviting me and for having me come and open the event for the STEM conference. This is for the women, the girls. What we have in our tradition is that we pray about 4 times a day, which you're supposed to do. You pray as soon as you open your eyes in the morning. You give thanks for having life. And then at noon, just for lunchtime, like, you give thanks again for having the food in front of you and for being there for the high noon. And then again at supper time, you pray again to give thanks. And then again at night before you go to bed, you're supposed to say a prayer of thank you and pray that you will be blessed with another day to enjoy life. So I hope your conference is a success. I know I've attended many conferences. I've presented in many of them over the years. So what I wanted to do was to say a prayer for all of you, that everything goes good for the duration of this conference, and that the people that come there, the young women, will learn from it and gain the experience that they need. I've been teaching for the last 50-some years, 52 to be exact. This last while I was teaching at the University of Alberta in Ed Policy Studies. And I've taught many students here in Regina over the past 20 years. And so I really enjoyed the Science Center every time I take the students there. And this is with the Science Center, I believe. So I want to say thank you, and I'll say a prayer now. And when we do, I'll take my glasses off and say, Kananaskomo. Say giving thanks for the blessings that we have for today. So I want to say, hi, hi. Hi, hi means thank you, and tanse is hello. When I should have said tanse. Eko hi, hi to all the people that invited me here. And I'll say a prayer now. Neuskanoche, sagaste no, sawa no, paksemuta, kiwete no. Kantotamoa ko gatayo kanak kakanuem ko keok teoche kawichi ko ko utanos kagiskak. So kananas ko mo heok. I'll say thank you again. Hi hi, hi hi is thank you. Or gananas ko mon. So gagagisamon. Hama mautawi maus pemekaing se manto kananas kom no danos ko takiskaut sa bataman. Temagihtaun kitemaagihtaw ko tagay tapsik. Kues kahki ogi ko ikatis paihkuak. Temaginaw ko ykseisin to tamagesta mo kanots kagiskak. Mina nistosin taasimsak. Niitsigihkaw. Temaginaw. Minan tanso sagas seuskuesis. Minawapik hiwawasis. Askiwasis minawapi pasquamustos kap muhtet. Kan wemenan sa wemenan no tawimao. Kais miuhtoin minaniston kamogis kausko kais ikat kauyan. Temagihtaun kana wemen sa wemen. Ego kaitin geetse koota kiam kamiu paiwak. Uistaak seispakseihtes tamok. Apak nasot skohts tsemassa. Haameok teutse. Nkasa puhtaan omaja. Stemao. Temagihtaun no tawimao. Hi, hi. We say that tobacco is the link to the spirit world when we offer the tobacco. I'll sing two songs, a thank you song, and the other song is thank you. The first one is thank you song, and the next one will be for women or children, that we'll all be blessed for everything, okay? Eikä pattuutamaan kiikoja tanuhtaui maksee mantok. Tämä kihtaun minäkistam sekoskis koes kahki kiikoja tispaik. Nenanas komau no tawi mau, nenanas komau negawi mau, nenanas komau no kompanes, nenanas komau nemosompanes. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Nenanas komau no tawi mau, nenanas komau negawi mau, nenanas komau no kompanes, nenanas komau nemosompanes. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Nenanas komau no tawi mau, nenanas komau negawi mau, nenanas komau no kompanes, nenanas komau nemosompanes. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Nenanas komau no tawi mau, nenanas komau negawi mau, Nenanas komau no companes, nenanas komau nemosom panes. Hey yo yo oh, hey yo yo oh. Ama mo tawi mau e paksemtan kau itsin ka pehtawi no magais mau musangi ano tagiam ka kyo ko is ka dispay season tatamages tamo ko kawas ko ta ngai tawa kawasak ka kyom kiana wasak hai to ano tawi mau. Okay, now this is the Sawamin Bless Me song for everyone, all the children of the earth here and all of us here. Sawe me kawasesak, sawe me kawasesak, sawe me kawasesak. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Sawe me kawasesak, sawe me kawasesak. Sawe me kawasesak, hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Sawe me kawasesak, sawe me kawasesak. Sawe me kawasesak, hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Sawe me kawasesak, sawe me kawasesak. Sawe me kawasesak, hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Hey yo yo, hey yo yo. Now I'm going to add that Mother Moon song. We see the full moon every month and we honor Mother Moon. Kokom Moon, Grandmother Moon. For all women, we do that. We give thanks at the full moon. For all the women, we give thanks to the full moon once a month because we have reached that circle, the month with Mother Moon. Tipskau pisem no companes away minuta hanos. Hey yo yo yo, hey yo yo, hey yo yo yo, hey yo hey yo yo. Ya hey yo, ya hey yo. Tipskau pisem no companes away minuta hanos. Hey yo yo yo, hey yo yo, hey yo yo yo, hey yo hey yo yo. Ya hey yo, ya hey yo. Tipskau pisem no companes away minuta hanos. Hey yo yo yo, hey yo yo, hey yo yo yo, hey yo hey yo yo. Ya hey yo, ya hey yo. Tipskau pisem no companes away minuta hanos. Hey yo yo yo, hey yo yo, hey yo yo yo, hey yo hey yo yo. Ya hey yo, ya hey yo, ya hey yo. Anenanas como no tawi mau kutakiska o sapahtaman. Ego te pewitsa ko kiskas kistaan. Kana wemenaan kisingi ko patotaman we pasnama on kahkion pasta huna. Se mohkaisen no tawi maukse manto. Hai hai tuan, hai hai, hai hai, hai hai, hai hai. Hai hai means thank you. kun se kinanaskum naagakyo, and I hope your conference turns out very well.
Thank you, Elder Marjorie LaValle. We are incredibly honored to have had you come here and perform that ceremony and song for us. Thank you. This event would not have been possible without the support of the Status of Women's Office, the Government of Saskatchewan, and the Minister responsible, the Honourable Laura Ross, who also serves as the Minister of Parks, Culture and Sport. Minister Ross is a huge proponent and advocate for women and young women, and a longtime friend of the Saskatchewan Science Centre. Minister Ross was first elected MLA for Regina-Qu'Appelle Valley in 2007 provincial election, and she was re-elected in 2011, 2016, and 2020. She is a founding member of the Saskatchewan chapter of Equal Voice and serves as a role model and mentor to young women interested in professional and political lives. We are honored to have Minister Ross attending our Girls Go Code last year, and it was a huge inspiration to participants. Afterwards, we'll be joined by Sandy Baumgartner, CEO of the Saskatchewan Science Centre.
Hello, welcome to the first ever Science Centre's Girls in STEM Conference. As the Minister responsible for the status of women, I'm proud to partner with Sandy and her team on this very important event. I would like to begin this day by acknowledging that the land on where I'm standing is Treaty 4 territory and the traditional home of the Métis. I'm pleased to bring greetings on behalf of Premier Scott Moe and the Government of Saskatchewan. Since 2015, February 11th has been observed as the International Day for Women and Girls in Science. This acknowledges women's contributions and achievements in science and focuses on girls entering science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, also known as STEM careers. The goal of this day is introduce you to the field of STEM and help you imagine the future possibilities of a career in these fields. Increasing young girls and women's participation in non-traditional fields is something the Government of Saskatchewan is very passionate about, and we know how important those contributions are. Inspiring and building early engagement for youth like yourselves in STEM areas is important, as these fields can help grow and innovate many sectors, including mining, engineering, agricultural, and information technology, and contribute to the success of our beautiful province. Not only are these careers exciting to be part of, but being able to see examples of successful women who are currently working in this field is very inspiring. It's so important to have more female role models and mentors who demonstrate that everyone, regardless of gender, has a place and opportunity in any career they choose. There are over 25% of women working in STEM jobs in Saskatchewan. I would like to see that number increase as we help women and girls find their place in these careers with learning opportunities such as this conference. There are many different STEM education and career fields to pursue, as there are innovative ways to give back to our community that contribute in so many ways. The sky's the limit, and I encourage you to continue your learning after this conference. Find what most interests you, what sparks your curiosity, and reach out to the mentors you learn from in this conference to learn more. Thank you to the Saskatchewan Science Centre for holding this conference and educating our youth and community. Thank you to the educators, presenters, mentors, and the young girls for your participation today. I hope you all enjoy the program activities and learn as much as possible, but most importantly, have fun. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Minister Ross. You are such a huge advocate and supporter of young women in our community and our province. We are honored to have you support this conference. I had the opportunity to join in on one of the Girls Coding Club sessions with Minister Ross last year. What an engaged group they were, full of energy and enthusiasm with so much curiosity. I recall Minister Ross encouraging them to dream big, and that's why we are here today, celebrating the International Day of Women and Girls in Science and giving you the opportunity to meet some amazing women, learn about their interesting careers, and try out some cool activities. So let's get started. I have the distinct pleasure of introducing you to our keynote speaker, Dr. Samantha Yamin, or Science Sam, as many of you may know her. That's certainly how I know her. Samantha is a neuroscientist. She attended the University of Toronto, where she studied how stem cells build and maintain the brain. She then went on to found Science Sam Media, a science-based digital production agency. Samantha is passionate about empowering people to explore science by making it more familiar, accessible, and inclusive. She loves taking anything science anywhere and everywhere. She hosted a live stream with an astronaut aboard the International Space Station. She presented her research on the streets of Toronto's busiest intersection. She talked ringside with Muay Thai fighters about performance anxiety and showed off model and real brains at 1 a.m. in a yurt during an all-night art festival. I can't wait to hear what she might have in store for us today. Please join me in welcoming Science Sam.
Good morning. Hello, everyone, and happy International Day for Women and Girls in Science. My name is Samantha Yamin. My pronouns are she and her, and I am so excited to be with you today to celebrate this really important occasion. Now, I hear we have people tuning in from Fond du Lac, Buffalo Narrows, Flying Dust First Nation, Meadow Lake, Kipling, White City, and so many other incredible places across the province of Saskatchewan. So thank you so much for making time to celebrate this exciting day with me today. And a special, special thank you to the Government of Saskatchewan's Status of Women Office, and especially Minister Laura Ross for being such a champion of this day and making it possible for us to get together, giving people like me a voice to celebrate my passion and reach out to young girls, women, non-binary, two-spirit, and gender diverse people everywhere to let them know that science not only has a place for you, but it really, really needs you. Now, before I get into talking a little bit about myself and my journey in science, I want to start by talking about someone really, really important, and that's you. You are a magnificent constellation of 37.2 trillion cells so small we can only see them through the powerful lens of a microscope. You are made up of, we look like just one big thing covered in skin, but in fact, even that skin and everything beneath it is made up of so many magnificent cells, 37.2 trillion. That sounds like a big number, but let me tell you just how big a number that is, just how many cells there are in your body that make up who you are and make up everything that you're able to do. 37.2 trillion, okay? Look how many zeros there are there. After the number 37, there are 12 other numbers. That's how big a number it is, 37.2 trillion cells. If we started counting now, one number a second, starting at 1, and tried to count up to 37.2 trillion, but let's actually try that. Let's do a little experiment. Let's try to count to this number just to get a sense of how big it is. Ready? Okay, let's go. 1, 2, let me hear you. 3, 4, 5, 6, keep going. 7, 8, 9. Okay, I'll stop us there because it would actually take us 31,546 years to count to 37.2 trillion. There are 12 numbers after that 37. If you compare that to the number of people on this planet, and don't get me wrong, there are a lot of people on this planet, but there are 7.9 billion. That only has 9 numbers after the 7. So if you agree that there are lots of people on the planet, remember that there are way more cells in your body. You're your own planet, your own universe of these tiny microscopic cells, which I always thought was really fascinating as someone who loves biology and loves to look at things through the microscope. That's what makes up you, your person, and who you are. One last way, just to get a sense of these numbers again, because I also know it's a pretty cold day in Saskatchewan today, is that correct? Maybe you're used to it, but still it's chilly. Why don't we do a little visualization Can I get everyone to close their eyes with me, please? Okay. Now, imagine that you are on a very warm, sunny beach. Close your eyes. You're picturing a beach. There's a nice sound of waves and there's a nice ocean breeze and it's very relaxing and calming. And now you dip your hands into the sand. So reach into the sand and fill your hands with sand. And now you can open up your eyes and look at all this imaginary sand in your hands. Or if you want, you can have a peek on the screen where I have a picture for you. Do you think there's lots of sand in your hands right now? Lots of tiny little grains. Those grains are really tiny, right? Well, those grains of sand are way bigger than any of the cells in your body. And there are only like 400,000 grains of sand that you'd be holding in your hands compared to 37.2 trillion. Imagine like all the sand that you can see on the beach, and maybe that's getting close to the number. What's most fascinating about that to me, what's really driven my curiosity, and you might be thinking, why is this woman talking so much about grains of sand and cells and who cares? Well, what's really cool is that all of these many cells in our body came from one. They came from just one cell, a very cool cell called the fertilized egg. And then that one cell divided to 2, and then that divided to 4, and then to 8, and then to 16, 32, 64, 128, and I'm going to stop there because that's a lot of mental math. But that's where all of them came from. So now when you think of how many cells there are, and then you remember that it started from 1, that's pretty incredible that our bodies are able to do that. From 1 to 37.2 trillion. And this cartoon shows you they're not just the same cell. It's not just making photocopies and photocopies of the same boring round cell. All of these cells have beautiful, unique structures that let them do different things. Everything that our body does is because of cells coming together in the community of our body, coming together like a team to get different things done. You have beautiful fat cells that are really important for providing nutrition and support. You have your muscle cells helping you move. You have your immune cells keeping you safe, blood carrying around oxygen, all of these amazing cells with little funny hairs on them that help people to hear and help with touch sensation. All of these incredible cells with different shapes and different functions in the factory that is our body, ever working without us even really paying attention or knowing what's happening. Our cells are showing up and doing the thing, which is awesome. What fascinated me most learning about this when I was a science student was thinking, okay, that's a lot of work that has to happen while our bodies are developing, before we're born, and then after we're born too. And we continue, our bodies continue to develop and grow, and we go through puberty and all that fun stuff, right? How does it happen pretty robustly, pretty consistently? I mean, sure, we all look a little bit different, but for the most part, we look pretty similar as humans. We have the same general parts, and we all come out as humans with the general same shape. We're not coming out as elephants or squirrels. We're coming out as us. So it's a pretty consistent process, right? We're all made of basically the same parts, the same types of cells, connected in more or less the same way from person to person. How is that process happening consistently in all these billions of people that have ever existed? That fascinated me because going from 1 to 37.2 trillion is a pretty big deal. That's a lot of work to do. But what's the most fascinating part is that, okay, we're coming out similarly enough that we're the same species, but differently enough that we all have unique personalities, unique thoughts, unique ways that we interact with the world. So we're the same, but we're also different in really awesome and cool and important ways. That's what makes humans so exciting. And other animals too. It's fascinating that even though we're kind of the same, we still have these unique, subtle differences that make us who we are, that really make us able to do unique things, make you able to do something no one else can do, because no one else can be you, and no one else can do things exactly the way that you do. So I was fascinated with that. How is this process so consistent that we all are humans and yet so different that we're all slightly unique? and we all come out a little bit differently in such a fabulous way. That's where my interest really started, is trying to understand that process and how it can create people who are so wonderful in their diversity and wonderful in their uniqueness and their personality. And that's where I grew really interested. It was around high school. I became really interested in understanding what makes people them, what makes me, me, and you, and why can't I think your thoughts and I can only think my thoughts. I thought that was fascinating. And that drew me to the brain, this beautiful structure of billions of cells. So it holds quite a lot of the cells that we talked about. And those cells are really unique because not only do they help us survive and do the things that we do day to day, but they also make us who we are. They're the cells that give us our personality, the cells that store our memories, cells that help us think and be creative and solve problems and talk to one another. Have you ever thought about how amazing it is that we can communicate? We can share what we're thinking and what's on our mind and talk about things that are completely ridiculous and may not even make sense outside your friend group. You can have inside jokes and we can build all of these unique ways of communicating with one another. It's just so cool. It's awesome. And it's because of these cells in your brain. So the more I learned about cells, the more I learned about people, the more fascinated I was by us, the more I wanted to understand, how does the brain achieve this? How is it possible that before we're born, the cells of our brain are formed and then they continue to mature into your 20s? Your brains are still developing. And because of that process, we get to be these awesome people that we are. I needed to know more. So I'll tell you a little bit more about what I learned about the cells of the brain and how they contribute to us being unique in who we are. I'll show you the anatomy of just one really simple type of cell. This is a kind of a standard type of cell, like it looks like a motor neuron, the type of cell that helps you when you want to move. Basically, they have these funny shapes. They kind of look like a tree, right? Up on the top on the left is this kind of arbor with all these branches, and then there's a bit of a trunk. So information comes in through that arbor. The cells are all connected to one another, and they send each other messages, electrochemical messages. And the information comes in at these branch points, then shoots down that long trunk and goes out the other end. So it kind of looks, the part that kind of looks like the roots of the tree. And then there's another cell ready to receive it at its branches, and so on and so on. So all of these cells are connected to one another and able to share messages. And they're doing this super, super fast. They're sending, this is what some of the connections can look like between these cells. They're sending these electrochemical messages at about 120 meters per second or 434 kilometers an hour. Really, really fast, which is important because I'm talking fast, you're listening or you're reading along very fast. And so we do things really quickly in this world. And so our brain is able to do things fast too, which is awesome. And then there are trillions of these connections. And that's really how our brain is wired to come together. And these connections they're not stuck in place. They can change with time as we learn new things. And so every time we talked about personality, every time you're thinking something or you're formulating a joke, that joke that everyone knows you for, what's really happening is the cells in your brain are firing just like this. These are real cells firing in a mouse brain. And you can see they're not all lit up at once. They kind of look like lights on like Christmas lights, for example, that are all flashing at different times. They're connected and they're sending those messages one to another. And as they get activated, I'll play it again for you. Oops. As they get activated, that's one sending a message to another, to another, to another. And that unique pattern of activation is the cells in our brain communicating. There you go. You can see it. One to another, zoom, zoom, zoom. That's your thought. That's you thinking right now about whatever you're thinking about, whether it's what I'm talking about or something else that's on your mind. This is what's happening inside your head. And that those unique patterns, we all have the same types of cells. We have pretty similar wiring, but there are unique, subtle differences. And that's what makes me able to think how I think and you think how you think. And those things can change. Those connections can change. Those patterns can change based on our experiences and things that happen to us. We continue to adapt. We have this amazing ability to adapt over time. And that's really what makes us, us. It's all encoded in our biology. In biology, that's forever changing and adapting and growing and forming new connections. It's the most complex puzzle you could ever solve, but the coolest one, in my opinion, because it lets you understand everything about us as the fascinating beings that we are. So when I learned that in my classes, you can just imagine, I needed to know how this happened. And there are so many fascinating questions when it comes to the brain, when it comes to the field of neuroscience. But the one that really got me was how. How can this happen? How can this happen? It's so complicated for all this wiring. How do our brain cells even form? And that was the specific question that I wanted to answer. In science, we always start with these really big puzzles, and we want to answer these really big questions, often philosophical questions like, what makes me me? That's a really philosophical question. That's a big part of science, is thinking about those things that are kind of meta and trippy. But then you have to find the little puzzle piece that you want to solve, because science is done as a team, and we all come together to solve these big questions by answering small questions. And the small question I wanted to answer is, how do our brain cells develop over time? That's kind of a big question, actually. I was studying a specific subset of cells. How do they develop specifically during this window of development? How do they form exactly 3 days before a mouse, which is I used as a model system? How do these specific cells form 3 days before the mouse is born? That was the question I asked. But in general, how do we go from these kind of boring round cells that are early in development to these fascinating complex ones that are able to do all the awesome things I described? Over time, how do they form? I wanted to know everything about it from step A to Z. So I pursued a PhD in neuroscience. It was my dream from when I was 14 years old. I didn't know exactly that was the question I wanted to ask, but I knew I needed to learn more about the brain. And this is me in my lab where I did my PhD. You can see on my favorite microscope, spent a lot of time hunched over the microscope, and it was always my favorite thing to do in the lab is get to look at all of the beautiful cells. And in doing that, I was able to start to answer the question. I'll show you before I tell you what I found. I'll show you just some of the beautiful cells that I got to see through the microscope. I didn't take all these pictures, but these are real pictures of real cells taken through a microscope. I took the ones in the middle, top and bottom, and on the bottom right. I took those myself in the lab. And you can see that all of these cells are colorful. They're not colorful in our brain, but we use these fascinating fluorescent molecules to light up different parts of the cell so that we can understand what type of cell it is and what it's doing and how it's branching, and understand more about the cell structure. So that's why they're colorful. But these are real pictures of real cells that look really similar to the ones that you have in the brain. If I can tell you a second, my favorite cell here, I don't know if you have a favorite just from looking. I'll let you tell your partner or message someone what your favorite cell on the screen is. I think they all look really awesome. My personal favorite is in the top left. Those are Purkinje cells found in the back of the brain in the cerebellum. So if you sit back like this, like you're chilling, relaxing, your hands are kind of over the cerebellum of the brain. And those I just think are one of the most fascinating cells. They kind of look like a root vegetable. And so if anyone has grown up on a farm, I'm sure you can tell me exactly what type of plant has roots that look like that. But I just think it's amazing to know that that's what's inside our head. Really, really beautiful. So knowing that our brain cells have all these beautiful structures, I told you I wanted to try to figure out how they form. How do you go from boring cell, round cell, to beautiful branchy cell? I had a hypothesis, as we do. We always start in science with an observation and then a question and a hypothesis to test it, to try to understand what's the cause of that observation or what's going on for that observation. And here was my guess. I said, okay, we start with some boring cell that doesn't really have much shape to it, and it probably divides a bunch into 3 different types of what's the right word, like daughter cells. And then those eventually over time mature and grow and develop. That was my guess. There are 3 main types of cells in the brain. So there are probably 3 main daughter cells that mature and slowly specialize to being their cell type. Really simple pathway. That was the hypothesis that we were testing. Really simple. You can kind of think of this like a family tree, but instead of for your family, it's a family tree for cells in the brain. So I cultured lots of cells in a dish. I actually grew cells from a mouse brain in a dish so that I could watch them grow. And you can see in each of these, this is the kind of dish that we use. You're used to seeing maybe a round Petri dish, but we often use these rectangular dishes with all of these little circles in them where we can grow cells. So each of these, there's 6 little homes for cells here where I'm growing them in that pink liquid, which is the food for the cells. And by the way, I did this a lot in all of these tubs, giant Tupperware, these big plastic boxes. There are stacks and stacks and stacks of plates of cells that I studied. And what I did was I would grow them I would get those ancestral cells, those cells at the top of the family tree, and I would put them in the dish and I would look through the microscope and watch them and track and use really cool genetic tools to track those cells and see how they change over time and map, okay, those cells are related and those cells are related. Okay, now we can piece together the family tree. So what do you think I found? Do you think that I was right and that it was this very simple 1 to 3 cells and done, very clean family tree? Of course not. The world is always more complicated. Science is always more complicated. This is going to look a little messy because this is an actual figure from my PhD thesis. So you don't have to worry about all the details on this page, but I actually found the family tree is a little more like this. This was one of the big findings of years of work that I put into my PhD. My PhD was about 6 years. And this was one of the big findings summarized on this one slide is like 6 years of my life. And I don't regret a second of it. But here you can see it ended up being much more complicated. And by tracking the cells and really paying attention and watching them and mapping them out, we learned that, it's actually a pretty complicated process how our cells develop over time. And a really awesome and very cool process. And there's a bit more fluidity than we imagined. Things aren't so concrete like this, or like this, much like humans. There's a bit of fluidity, there's a bit of change that can happen. Things aren't stuck to one fate. They can actually switch and become a different type of cell just at the right time. And that was a really important and really interesting thing. But right in the very fabric of our cells, there's this ability to change your fate and become something new, become something different than the path people might think you're set on, which I thought was a really, really relevant lesson, not just to today, but for all of our lives every day. Now, I told you to get to that slide, I told you it was 6 years in a PhD, but I also did some undergraduate work. And so these are my 3 graduations. The first one, 2008, was high school. 2012 was my undergraduate, where I first fell in love with neuroscience. And then finally in 2019, I graduated with my PhD. That's the biggest smile because it was so much work to get to that date, but so much fun and the greatest privilege to be able to just ask questions about our world and find the answers for yourself. Ask questions no one's asked before and find answers no one's found before. Every time you're looking through the microscope, you are learning something new and you are thinking about something that only a very small number of people have thought about before. And now you get to find the answer that no one else has known before. It's the most exciting and wonderful thing that you can do. I was in school for a long time, but school, when you're doing research, so between 2012 and 2019, the type of work that I was doing, it wasn't like going to class every day, which is fun too, but it was going to the lab every day and going through the microscope, looking through the microscope and asking those types of questions. So it was a very different type of school and a really fun type of school, something where you just get to explore and learn. And then, of course, after this much coursework and this much studying and this much hard work and long nights in the lab. I can't tell you the number of times I was in the lab after midnight because our experiment was long and we were so close and I needed to know an answer. And so I stayed late by choice because it was fun and fascinating and I loved the people I work with. But it was a lot of work. So, of course, at the end of it, I got to celebrate my doctorate, becoming Dr. Sam, the scientist, with an amazing brain cake. That's thanks to my wonderful family. This was on the days that were hard. This was the thing I thought about was, okay, I'm going to have a big party when I graduate. And then my sister surprised me with this brain cake, which is the best gift you can give to someone who loves the brain. And it tasted delicious. So really, really nice that you can always know that you can celebrate those hard days with something fun. But this day, while it was big and it was a special, momentous occasion to graduate from my PhD, and something, one of the things I'm most proud of that I've done, because it was so hard, as amazing as it was. And while it felt like that was sort of an end of a time, it was really only the beginning. It was really the beginning of me exploring the depths and the potential of my career in science. And so now I want to talk a little bit more about some things that I've learned during that process, but also since then, and what I've really learned and explored about what a career in science can be. Because I think when we think about careers in science, we think about what I showed you, me in front of the microscope, often people in a lab coat, but there's so much more. There are endless possibilities through STEM, through science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, through STEAM, I should say. There are endless possibilities for what your career could look like. And you don't need to decide that now, but there are so many options. And so if you haven't seen the one you like yet, I want to give you a sense of how you can find it, or spoiler, how you could even create it. So I want to share with you some important lessons that I've learned since graduating about careers in science. And the first one might sound cliche, but I don't care. It's important. The most important thing that I didn't necessarily learn from my textbooks or classrooms was how important it is to really be you, to really bring your full authentic self. And that's what this day is really about. This day, it's about celebrating, but it's also about making space and carving out safety for all of you, whether you're a young woman, a young girl, whether you're two-spirit, you're non-binary, you're trans, or you're anything, no matter what identities you have. If you're from a community that is generally marginalized because of your race, or you come from a small town where there aren't a lot of research labs nearby, and that feels like something far unattainable, it's actually really important that you have that unique experience. You have those unique identities. And while you may not right now know of people with your same experience, I promise you that they exist and that there's always a path and it's always possible. But what's important for me to tell you today is that I need you to bring your uniqueness. I need you to bring that secret sauce that only you have to science. And that wasn't always easy for me to do. See, during my PhD, I loved science, as you can tell. I loved what I studied. But the most exciting thing for me was also getting to share it and finding the art in it. So I started taking these photos. These are actually photos from my Instagram, science.sam, if you want to check them out. Actually, it doesn't look much like this anymore because I'm no longer in the lab. But these are photos that I took and shared to social media during my PhD, simply because I saw the beautiful art in science. I saw the beautiful labs I was in, and it was amazing. And I wanted to share that there is this creativity and this important artistry in science and in research. So I started sharing these photos, and of course, tons of photos of cells. All these, most of these photos I took myself, and that was beautiful. And that was art. And I wanted to share that as well as a way to get people excited about the work that researchers like me were doing, answering these fundamental questions about our world. So I started sharing that in my own unique way with the certain Instagram aesthetic that resonated with me, that I liked. And sadly, a lot of people didn't like that. I actually had a lot of really negative experiences where someone even wrote a horrific thing about me in a really well-established scientific journal, saying that what I was doing was not good. And I won't get into it, but it was really harmful. And I had mentors and people telling me, I was wasting my time doing this and I should just be focusing on my research. And that was really upsetting. because this was something I really loved and I was finding valuable, and I was able to connect with people, and I was able to show my true self. I'm someone who likes makeup and fashion, and I love these certain colors, and I love taking photos, and I loved editing pictures of myself so that they looked like art. That was a side of me I was excited to be able to express, and I was excited to be able to showcase, and I got negative feedback for it. But I was also supported by a bunch of people who were excited about what I was doing and saying, hey, I've never seen anyone do this before. This is actually really cool. I never cared about brain cells until you started talking about them the way that you talked about them, using pop culture references and making it fun and easy through Instagram. And because of those people, I felt like I had the support I need to keep going. And I realized, I'm not going to listen to those people who don't like it. You don't like it, it's not for you. I'm doing this for me, and I'm doing this for people like me, and building that community that I never had and I wanted to see. So while it wasn't always easy to be me and to be my full authentic self, and it may be hard for you to be that way too, and you might have other things and other parts of your identity that when you express, people aren't welcoming the way that they should be. That's what this day is about changing. That's what today is meant to change that. But in the meantime, while we're working on that change as a community, I want you to be you, and to know that as much as you're able to share, that's really valuable. And the more people push back, probably the more important it is to have someone like you in science. Or the less that you've seen yourself represented, the more important it is that you are represented and that we do get to have your unique perspectives. And in fact, for me, when I finally was able to keep going and find the support and safety to be able to be my authentic self, it ended up being a huge, huge asset and a huge advantage that has helped me build a career that even is making me able to be here today to talk to you. And now these are some pictures of what my life looks like now as a science communicator, as someone trained as a neuroscientist, but now who does the majority of their work talking and sharing science and connecting with people about science. I've gotten to do all sorts of really cool things, and I was invited to do these cool things because of the unique perspective I brought. I got to chat with astronaut David Saint-Jacques when he was at the International Space Center. I met Chris Hadfield. I got to give a TEDx talk and meet some of my favorite science YouTubers like ASAP Science and Derek Muller, Veritasium, and the physics girl, Diana Cowern, and that's Carly Kloss in the middle. That was really awesome. We got to come together to celebrate science. And because we're people who celebrate science in our unique way, we were invited, which was awesome. And I've gotten to host TV shows and do really fun things. And it's because of my unique energy that I was once made fun of for that now I got those opportunities. I'm not saying it's always easy, and I'm not glorifying that it's always something we're able to do, but there is huge value in us being in our unique selves. And I want to see more people get those similar opportunities for being their unique selves. And that's, again, what today is about. Now, as I kind of alluded to, it was really hard sometimes. And so I could not have done it alone, and I did not do it alone. And so my next piece of advice, an important thing I want you to know for your STEM journey, your career journey, is that it's so important to connect with others and to form community, right? I'm showing you a picture of the brain down here. This is actually a side view of the brain going this way. The front of the brain is on the left, and the back of the brain is on the right on this screen. And this is showing you some different pathways in the brain that are light up when something is good, makes us feel good, and is rewarding. There are tons of reward pathways in the brain that are really awesome to study as well. But it's relevant here because I want to tell you that social connections, forming community, that lights up those reward pathways. It is rewarding for us to connect with others. It feels good, and it's important. And it also gives us the support to let us feel like our real selves. And so when I was having some of that negative feedback, I was really lucky. I was able to reach out and find community who also had received that negative feedback. And we came together and we're like, so it's not us, it's everybody else. We are like, this is a thing. We are us, and there's nothing wrong with that. And I found that community through social media. Social media can be a weird place sometimes, not always the best place. But when we use it strategically to form community and connect, it's a beautiful place. And so these are some of the hashtags that I've searched on all sorts of platforms and there are tons of others too, but to connect with other like-minded people or people with similar experiences, or people who care about things that I care about, who care about people being their authentic selves in science. And so I encourage you to explore some of these if you're on social media, if you have permission to be on social media, maybe with the help of a parent or with a friend or with a teacher. I think it could be really awesome to find role models and to find community members through these hashtags like this of real scientists. If you search these, you'll find real scientists sharing their unique experiences in a way that can hopefully resonate with you. So I was able to find that community online and start to find other people who had had similar experiences to me. And that helped me feel less alone and helped me realize, okay, the challenges aren't about me. It's about something bigger. And if we come together, we can push back and we can create more space, not only for us, but for more people, and keep opening the door for others who may be experiencing exclusion for other reasons that need to change. So be you and connect. The third thing is create. Now, my job is as a science communicator, and I do a lot of that through social media. And honestly, my job is different every day. And it's kind of a job that I made up. What I wanted to do and the way I wanted to do it didn't really exist. So I sort of created it. Wasn't very easy. And hopefully when it's your turn, it'll be a little bit easier. I'm working on that for all of us. But whatever you want to do, however you want to bring your authentic self, whatever unique interests you have, however you want to bring it to a career in science, technology, engineering, arts, or math, it may not exist. You may have a unique collection of interests that may form a niche that doesn't exist yet. So you can create the job that you want. You can find a way to the job exists, but you're going to create the role in a unique way. You're going to bring in, okay, my family, I come from a long line of farmers, and I love the things that I learned on the farm. And my family's expertise in farm, actually, I come from my dad's side. They're farmers back in Lebanon. And if you've ever met a farmer, which I'm sure many of you have, they know so much. They are so knowledgeable and they know everything about their craft. And if you want to take some of those learnings and now apply them to a scientific question, and you want to do it in a unique way that maybe someone else, maybe your family has its own way of doing things unique to your culture, and you want to now combine that and create that new scientific question, ooh, that's where the magic happens. So I want to encourage you to be you and connect and use that, find that community that will help you create something new. I want to share with you, I already told you some of the things that I've done. I want to share with you some of my friends and the awesome things that they've done too. More in my field of science communication, but anyone know Emily Calandrelli, also known as the Space Gal? She's the host of Emily's Wonder Lab on Netflix. And as far as I know, she is the first person to host a science TV show while pregnant. And she's honestly one of the most inspiring people and one of the best mentors and friends, not just because she's awesome and is an amazing science communicator and scientist, but she cares deeply and mentors other people and has helped me a great deal. And when I look at the way that she's creating a new path, she created this show that showcased her at her most authentic self, showcased her in a way that we don't get to see scientists often. She inspires me. She's a good example of someone creating this path. Another is Dr. Raven, the science maven. She was recently on another Netflix show, Ada Twist, where she got to do a rap about science being everywhere. And Dr. Raven is amazing. If you don't know her, you got to look her up and find her because she's known for making science raps. She's a molecular biologist studying the inner workings of cells. And she's a science communicator, and she's also a rapper. She's also a model. She also has her own line of clothing. She does everything. But what's really cool here is she got to bring her love of rap and music onto the show about science, and it was amazing. And she has lots of cool songs if you want to check them out. These are people doing science and building careers in science that didn't really exist. And because of their bringing their authentic selves, they're making them exist. They are saying like, hey, I am a person in science and I have a cool perspective. Let's talk about it. Let's showcase it. Let's put it on Netflix, in fact. And one of the things that I'm really proud of is that my friends and I, we love drag. We love the art and power of drag. I don't know if anyone here likes RuPaul's Drag Race, but I do. And I think it's really powerful to get to push the lines of gender as well and get to explore that. And so we created, as far as I know, the first science drag show where we had scientists dress up in drag and do a lip sync and get to talk about their research as well. And it was so fun and welcoming. And that was us being our authentic selves, creating something that didn't exist because we liked it. And we figured if we like it, chances are someone else will too. Now, the very last thing I want to say is to keep exploring. Keep open. You don't really know and you don't need to know right now exactly what you want to do. It's a common question people will ask you, and it's okay for them to ask, and it's okay to think about, and it's okay to even declare what you think you might want to do. And I encourage you to do that now. Share in your classrooms or in the chat. People will often ask, well, what do you want to be when you grow up? It's a good question, and you can have an answer now, but I need you to stay open to that answer changing. I need you to stay open to exploring new things because you don't know what opportunity you'll have to create something new. You won't know who you'll meet, who will give you this new idea for a collaboration in a research area or working in a place you never imagined you could work. You never know what opportunities might open up. You never know how your interests will change, what new experiences you'll have that you'll want to explore more. So I want you to stay open. And especially because if we go back to my favorite thing, your brain, this part of your brain, the prefrontal cortex, if you just put your hands on your forehead right here, you're kind of hugging your prefrontal cortex through the skull. It's still developing. And this part of the brain is really important for decision making and evaluating and all that complex, like abstract thinking, like I want to do this and I want to save the world in this way. Figuring out how to actually do that needs this part of the brain. And this part of the brain is developing into our 20s. So don't feel that you absolutely can set your goals and dreams from an early age. I did. But at the same time, I don't want you to feel like you have to stick exactly to that and there's no room for change. Keep exploring, keep staying open because you never know how you're going to want to evolve your goals. So you can love math. I love math. I think it's awesome and it's really fun and it's really cool. And stay open because maybe there will be an opportunity for you to combine your love of art with math. Don't think you need to stick on one very strict path. Remember my cells? They didn't stick to one really strict path. They kind of switched around and mixed and changed as was needed. And you can do the same. You can have your interests and you can form new paths. And that path can also change with time as there are new questions and curiosities that you want to explore. So I want you to stay open and to have goals and be excited about them, absolutely, but also be like, but you never know. Maybe I'll find something new tomorrow, and maybe I'll explore something else tomorrow. Don't feel that you have to just stick to one form of science either. Like, I like chemistry and that's it. That's okay if you really love chemistry, but maybe you'll dabble a little bit in biology too, or you'll explore a little bit of engineering. You never know. I encourage you to explore all of those things and to keep pushing yourself and trying new things and seeing where that may lead you and seeing what cool opportunities that may bring out. So be you, connect, create, and explore, stay open. Because in the last few years since I graduated, I've been trying my best to do that. And it's opened up a whole world of opportunities and a really awesome career in science that I didn't even know existed, but I absolutely love. And the greatest part is I don't know what's coming next, but I'm really excited for it by keeping these same values I'm telling you to have, I know that I'm going to be able to go down a new path, and maybe one day I'll talk to you again in 5 years, and I'll have done all sorts of new things that I'll be excited to share. And the same will be true for you. So stay open, be you, connect, create, and I can't wait to see all of the amazing things that you're going to do in your unique career in science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. Now, to end, staying true to advice number 2, connect, stay in touch. This is how you can reach me, where you can find me online. And let's start forming that community and form that community with the people there in your classroom, the people at this event. This event is all about building community. There's going to be lots of opportunities for you to stay connected in community with one another. And that's really important. So I want you to go forward with the rest of our event today, building new connections, exploring your new curiosities, building new friends who are going to support you and form that community to help you explore an amazing career in science. Make the most out of today and all of the opportunities here for you today. And again, we have to thank the Government of Saskatchewan Status of Women Office and Minister Laura Ross for making this possible, because today is the start of so many incredible journeys in science for everyone. Thank you so much. And I'm excited to answer some of your questions and talk a little bit more now.
Thank you, Samantha, for your presentation. It was super inspirational. And as you can see from our participants, you have sparked the imagination and curiosity of many young girls in our province. All right, so we have some questions for Sam. Just be a second before they load up. As a female professional, what are some challenges that you encountered that may be overlooked by other male coworkers? How do you overcome these challenges?
It's a really good question. I think, there's a lot of ways I could answer this. I think for me, one really big thing, especially with my career now, is I like to see the person in the science, and I like to see I think about science and I think about society, and I want to bring those things together. And I want to talk about science in a way that feels authentic to me. And sometimes that's being very bubbly, sometimes that's using pop culture references. And I found sometimes people don't understand that, and it kind of, they react weirdly to that. And I've also had a lot of misogyny in how people react to the way that I communicate. And I think for me, that's the big thing that I'm experiencing these days, is people not really understanding that I'm creating content by and for women and gender diverse people. That is my audience. And so we talk how we talk. And if people don't like it, that's really too bad. But I think the key thing there is that's not the norm in science. Science TV shows have always been made for a male audience. And I'm trying to change that. I'm trying to change the way that we talk about science. And that doesn't resonate with people because it hasn't been the norm. And so when you're pushing against the norm, it can be a little bit challenging and people can receive it the wrong way. But as I mentioned, it's really, really rewarding. So I think if anyone listening, you ever have someone criticizing you and the way you are, it's probably just because they're intimidated by you, and that's a them problem, not a you problem. And it's important for you to be able to be your true self and bring it to your work.
That's really awesome. Thanks for answering that. I know we have a few more questions. Just give me a second here. I just got to wait for them to populate. Perfect.
Thank you all for these great questions. It's
yeah,
amazing.
There's a lot of them. Everyone just, like I said, they're super inspired by your talk. So this way they can ask their own personal questions. Girls in STEAMs will be viewed by many students across Saskatchewan. What is one piece of advice you wish you had when you were their age?
An amazing, amazing question. I think for me, that the possibilities are endless. I think I felt a lot of pressure that I had to decide from a really young age what I wanted to do. And I remember being like, 11 years old and stressed because I couldn't decide between chemistry or biology. And I was like, I really love them both. And I want to be a chemist and I wanted to make perfume. I loved doing that. But I also was really interested in biology and, of course, studying cells. And I felt a lot of pressure that I had to choose and just do one. And I felt like people might judge me if I said that I wanted to do multiple things because I didn't want to look indecisive. I wanted to be confident. And I wish I just knew that that didn't matter. And I could explore all of it and it wouldn't matter. And it wasn't me being indecisive. It was me being curious and creative. So I think what I want people to know now, what I wish I knew, is that don't worry about knowing the exact job title because you're probably going to do all of the things that you want. So don't feel that pressure to limit yourself from now because there aren't limits. You can do it all. And I've seen it done and I know that you can do it too.
Thank you so much. That was an awesome answer. I know when girls get into STEAM, sometimes they do wonder, is this the right field for me? Is this something I want to do? And it's just really good to hear that response for girls, just to encourage them to consider a future in STEAM. I think we have another question here. Wouldn't all those cells die that you have stacked in the boxes to look at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So what I didn't mention, you're right. So cells are divas. They need to be kept at a certain temperature, certain pH. They need a certain amount of food. You got to replenish. And so we keep them in incubators when we're growing them. But the cells I had in those boxes, we actually did a process called fixing. Basically, it's a way to like not freeze the cells, but chemically solidify them. So you kind of freeze them in time using a mixture of chemicals. You preserve them. And so all of the cells that were in those boxes were cells I had grown and that I preserved so that I could study them under the microscope. So you have to do that step so that you can see the fluorescence that you've genetically put in the cells. So anyway, you're right, they would die if I just had them in the box, but I preserved them. And that's actually a key part to how we're able to take all those beautiful images that I showed you. But really, really good question. And you're right, cells are very finicky.
Isn't that the truth? So again, if you guys have any questions for Science Sam, put them in the chat box so we can load them up. Looks like we have another question here. How did you get funding for all of your studies?
This is an important question because it is true, education can be expensive and it shouldn't be, and I wish that it were always free forever. So I will be transparent on this. For undergraduate studies, there are many scholarships available, and I have a feeling if you are participating in this event, you are someone who can win a scholarship. So I encourage you to look for scholarships. When the time is right, you all probably have a few more years for that. But there are lots of scholarships available, especially for going into these science fields. So for your undergraduate studies, which is the thing you may want to explore after high school, and then after that, to do the actual research, to work in a lab, the good news is you don't have to pay tuition to do that. And you actually get paid to do that research. It's not a ton of money. So being a graduate student isn't something that pays a lot, but it pays for living expenses. I was able to, live in the city close to the lab on my own and, pay for those everyday expenses. And you don't have to pay to do research. Your tuition will be covered by the school, and you'll also get living expenses on top of that. That was something I didn't know because it was a big, my family couldn't afford paying for me to do that many years of school, but it was really important to know that those extra studies I did, that PhD, I didn't pay for it. We have ways of supporting students to do that research because while you're learning and you're still a student, you're contributing to research, and it is a job. So you get paid during that time. So don't let that be the reason that you don't go into science, because there's always a way to make it work, and there's lots of funding available for all stages. and reach out to someone who can help you navigate that when it's the time. You have a few more years to think about it, so don't stress about it from now, but there's lots of community and support that can help you figure out how to navigate that. But that was something I was worried about. And yeah, graduate school, you don't have to pay for. Undergraduate, when you get your first degree after high school, that you do, but there are lots of scholarships available.
Awesome. That's always good to know. I know that I've actually taken some scholarships and it's really helped me with my education. So thank you for that.
Yeah.
All right, we have another question here. What achievement are you most proud of?
I love this question. I think we don't celebrate our achievements enough. So I will answer. And then I ask that each of you after this, you answer for yourself of what you're most proud about as well. Mine, I would have to say, I already told you my PhD thesis, which is actually sitting just right there on the shelf. But I think right now, what I'm most proud of is the way that I've been able to use my Instagram to reach people and help them during the pandemic. I am very proud of myself, especially because of that story I told you where people weren't supportive of me when I first started my account. And now I'm able to reach millions of people every month. And I can't count the number of people who have reached out to ask me about vaccines or about how to stay safe during the pandemic. And I was able to answer those questions for them. And I am just so proud of that. Every day I get a message from someone about how the information I shared helped them or helped someone that they love. And that's the purpose of being in science for me, is to help people. So I'm proud of that. That makes a lot of the hard work I've put in really worth it. Now I want you to answer on your own later today. What are you most proud of? That's your homework from me.
Well, that's really awesome, again, because that's why we're here today, to do exactly what you're proud of. And we're happy to have you here for that.
Thank you.
Looks like we have another question here. When you first started, who pushed you to follow your dreams?
This is the only way for me to answer this, I think, is to say my mom. My mom has been a supporter. I'm so lucky. My whole family has always supported me and always told me, go get them, kick their butt. Like whenever I had a big presentation, they've always been there to support me all throughout my studies. But my mom especially always told me, do what you love. She worked really hard. My parents immigrated to Canada from Lebanon to build a better life from us, a safer life. And they worked really hard to build our lives here. And all that my mom wanted for us is to build a career and a life that made us happy. She worked so hard in her life so that we could explore everything that we wanted. And so for me, my mom, seeing her sacrifice, seeing her effort, and having her encouragement and support to pursue this on all the hard days, I just think of her and wanting to make her proud. And she's proud if I'm happy. So she's pretty easy to please in that regard. So I have to answer this with her.
I think it's really important that we have mentors in our life, and it's nice to hear that one's your mom. I do think we have, yes, so we have another question here. What made you want to study cells?
I know, I'm very obsessed with cells. I know it's a weird obsession, but that's okay. I think for me, I'm someone who always wants to know how. I'm the kind of person, when I'm watching a movie, in the back of my head, I'm like, how did they film this? Was it awkward for these people to film that scene? And I'm always thinking about how things happen. My favorite question is how. Of all the questions, I always am thinking about that in every part of my life. How do you do that? I see someone with cool makeup. How'd you do that? I'm very curious in that way. And so when I started thinking about people and our personalities and just the things that we can do, I realized that the real workhorse of our body are cells. They're the microscopic things that actually do stuff. The external features get all the credit, oh, our hands do things, but it's because of cells inside. And I think just learning that nitty gritty detail, that like me doing this with my hand is because of thousands of cells from my brain going down my spinal cord, down my muscles, through my muscles to the muscles in my hand, and then back again, giving feedback to make sure I'm doing it right. That's all a chain of event thanks to cells in the body. And so I just thought that was cool. It's the ultimate, like if you want to know how things form, how we do things, cells and all of the stuff inside them have the answers.
Super funny because I agree with the thing about the cells, because you don't really think about the little things that you do and the little tiny things that make it that much different. So it makes sense why you're so interested in cell study of cells. All right, we have another question here. What other job would you have chose instead of neurologist?
Yeah. So actually, I'm a neuroscientist. And I only say that because my best friend is a neurologist. And I'll tell you the difference, because for some of you, you may be interested in both or either. So I'm a neuroscientist. I'm the type of, I'm a doctor because I am a doctor, but I'm not a medical doctor. So I'm not the way that we use doctor every day. I'm a doctor in terms of an expert at looking at cells, looking and understanding the brain. So I'm a neuroscientist. My best friend is a neurologist. She is a doctor of the brain. She's someone you'd go to if you hit your head. She is less interested in the cells. They're important to her work, but she's more interested in curing ailments and helping people with ailments and illness and disease of the brain. So those are pretty related fields. We met actually in university. That's how we first met. And then we went on and did very different careers. She works in a hospital every day. I worked in a lab. So even those are two related fields that if you're interested in the brain, those are just two very broad of the many options that exist. I think for me, if I were another type of scientist, I would either be maybe an anthropologist. I think it's so interesting to study. I've spent a lot of time studying cells and how they come together in the body, but thinking about how people come together in society, I think is really fascinating. So maybe anthropology, if I didn't do what I do now, or I think it'd be really cool to be a chemist and study food. I love food and I love creating in the kitchen. And I think and I love enjoying other people's creations. And I think it'd be really cool to be able to study that at the chemical level. And there's a whole field called like gastroscience, where you study really cool ways of new forms of food and people trying to make meatless food and all of this really awesome stuff that you could do. So I think one of those two areas, but I also am curious about everything. So I could probably do a million things.
Oh, the study of food would be amazing and delicious.
Yes.
Yeah. We have another question. What is your favorite part of your job?
Yeah, when I was in the lab, my favorite part of that job was looking through the microscope. That was my meditative time. I would just put my headphones on, blast music, and scan through all those cells, take pictures for the sake of my research. We had to take pictures. So that was my favorite part when I was in the lab. Now, working as a science communicator, my favorite part of my job is this. I love connecting with people and getting excited about things together. I love hearing about what you're all excited about. I love the questions you're asking. I can't wait to see what you explore in the next sessions. And I love connecting with people, especially over science. So honestly, that's my favorite part of the job. I'm not just saying that. It's what I truly love.
Great to hear, because I know that just by how our chat is showing up right now, that people feel the exact same way and are excited to have you here as well.
Thank you.
I think we do have another question. I've just got to wait. Here we go. What happens if you have fluid in cells? A little bit more of a technical question.
If you have fluid in cells, good question. So our cells have some fluid, and they're kind of floating out in the cytoplasm. There is some fluid. I think that's actually a really cool point, is that I showed our cells, I didn't really talk about what's in them, but there are all of these little proteins and other molecules floating around in the cell. And when they bump together, that's when the cell's able to actually do things. Like, we talked about cells being important, but I didn't talk about the next layer of how the things inside the cell work. And a lot of that is moving through a fluid. But like a balloon, if there's too much fluid in the cells and there's too much or too little, that could also, as you may be learning in your science classes, that could cause the cell to shrivel, or it could cause the cell to explode. So there is just like a balloon, the right amount of fluid that you want to have, so that there's enough room for stuff to move around, but also you can maintain the integrity of the outer structure. And so on the outside of our cells is a very important membrane that keeps the right things in and the right things out, to maintain the happiness of that cell and its function. And too much or too little fluid can ruin the integrity of that membrane, and that would not be good, and the cell would die. Awesome question.
Yeah, that was a really great answer as well. I actually never really thought about that either, what would happen if there was fluid in the cell. So thank you for answering that. I know I learned something.
And you don't have to worry if you drink water or something, it's not going to mess up with the fluid in your cells. Like I mentioned, that membrane keeps the right things in and out. So you don't have to worry about it or anything. Your cells know how to keep the right amount of fluid, but that's another thing. Like, there's a bouncer on the outside of your cells keeping stuff in and out. Very, very cool. I could talk about cells forever.
There's nothing wrong with that. I'm interested in it, and I'm sure everyone in virtual world is as well. We've got another question here. Did you have lots of support from your teachers?
Yes. And so shout out to all of the teachers in all of our classrooms right now. Let's give a little round of applause for your teacher who brought you here today. Clearly, that's a supportive person there with you. I was very lucky to have amazing teachers in science and in all my subjects, honestly. And one of my favorites was my chemistry teacher in high school. And what's really awesome is, through the work I do now, we were actually able to reconnect. And I was able recently to tell him what an inspiration he was to me, and how I still remember the things that he taught me. And so, like, I remember the equations that he taught me in my grade 11 chemistry class, because he was such a good teacher and he taught it in such a good way. It still sticks in my brain to this day. So I had amazing teachers, and I've gone back and told them, thank you for making my career possible. And I've gotten to reconnect with a bunch of them through the work that I do. And it's been awesome. So your teachers are there to support you, to help you explore, to create a safe space for you to learn things. And so I encourage you, if you have questions, or if there are new things you want to explore and you want some support with that, your teacher is the first person to add to your community, to help you build more connections and to help you with those things that we talked about today.
Oh, amazing. Yeah, I know too that teachers definitely are that first line when it comes to getting you into the science, into STEAM as well. I think we have one final question. Let's see here. Did you have a role model or mentor growing up? If you did, tell us about them and why they inspired you. I guess we kind of already talked about it a little bit, but if you have another mentor that you'd like to mention, that would be awesome to hear.
Yeah, mentors are so important, and finding those people who are not just there for you to look up to, but they're going to help, they're going to support you. They're going to be there for you. They're going to, we call sponsor you. They're going to give you the back and forth that you need. I think in terms of role models, I grew up watching Magic School Bus. I don't know if that's cool anymore, or if you all are watching the reboot, but Miss Frizzle, she was my girl. So it's definitely people like that on shows like that. But in terms of my everyday life, I actually didn't meet a scientist until I went to high school, and some of my teachers, my science teachers, those were the first scientists that I met. But in going to the Science Center, I got to meet even more outside of the classroom. And so those interactions and experiences at the Science Center, at my local Science Center, that's what helped me to see more people who looked like me, to see all the different things that scientists could do, because the people working in those places, they're scientists, but they're also communicators and they're also creatives and curators, and they have really unique jobs in science too. So I think outside of TV, meeting those people in real life when I was really young happened in the classroom, and it happened at science centers. As I grew older and went to university, I got to add to that, and I mentioned Dr. Raven, the science maven, and Emily Calandrelli, but those didn't come till later. And it was so key to have those connections early in my career, those mentors in the classroom at science centers, because otherwise there were no scientists in my family. So I didn't have anyone else to look to, but in those spaces I found them. So I encourage you to do the same.
To hear about not just physical mentors helping you get to where you are today, but also institutions like your school and the Science Center. I know that that's something that we're trying to do today as well, as to get those inspirations out there to girls to consider a career in STEAM.
Yes, absolutely. Today is your day to find your mentor, your connectors, and your role models and your community.
Yes, exactly. And without your support, Sam, today would not have been as possible or as exciting. Thank you so much for coming out today. We really appreciate it. If anyone out in virtual land is wanting to get in contact with Science Sam, I know that she posted her handles. We'll also make sure that those are available to you as well if you have any further questions for Science Sam. The next part.
All of you for your attention and for having me, and just thank you again.
Thank you. Okay, so the next part of our agenda today is the breakout sessions, where you will meet our mentors and participate in several STEAM activities. I know you guys are all pumped up after meeting Science Sam, so you guys are going to be able to put science in action as well. We have 4 themes: engineering, nature, architecture, and coding. We recommend that you visit 2 activities this morning and the remaining 2 in the afternoon. If you run out of time, do not worry. The platform with all the mentor presentations and activities will be available for you to return to as often as you like. Now, I am pleased to introduce our mentors. Jamie Kilkenny will be your host for the engineering section, Paige James for the coding section, Emily Putz for nature, and Leanne Croft for architecture and design. Participants from Weyburn may find this section particularly interesting. Thank you for all the time you've provided to this conference today and the mentorships you are going to be giving to young women in our community. We could not be more thrilled to hear of each of you each day. Pardon me. You will find the mentor presentations and activities in the mentor room. Just click on the link at the top right-hand corner of your screen. Have fun and meet back here at 1 p.m. for our afternoon sessions. Have a great lunch.